How do you evaluate a mentoring approach? That's a question that's been asked of me numerous times over the years. I've always answered it for the most part through what I call the foreground practices. But I got thinking that maybe it might be helpful to give a little bit of the background concepts I would use to share my response for this notion of how do you evaluate a mentoring approach. And so, what I thought I would do is I would put together a presentation that I could share with you, but I was going to do it in a slightly different way. And that is just use the notes. I write articles, and that I would put that together and then bring it back to the whiteboard. And so that's what I am doing today. Now, this how do you evaluate a mentoring approach is also how do you go about an evaluation of the mentee and the mentor, how best to do it. And it it's one of those questions where you've got to sort of sit back and say, what is it that the person's really asking? And that's why I came up with this notion of background concepts and foreground practices. So I'm Stephen Hobbs. I'm with the Wealth Movement, and I also am the co-founder of the international mentoring community that offers certification for mentors. And I come from a practice of facilitated mentoring over about 30 plus years. I have done instructing and training and coaching and a few other education approaches, but I've always leaned into mentoring. And that, and from that perspective, I'm going to pull some ideas from it. But also, I've spent a number of years in the university setting, and from a high performance improvement, high performance technology perspective, for persons in organizations, managers, leaders, team leaders, group leaders. And I'm going to be pulling some ideas from it. So with this presentation, consider this part one, the background concepts to set that up. My next video will be part two, and I'll go over the foreground practices, and I'll share just a little bit more about that at the end. So instead of calling it, how do you evaluate the mentoring approach and making that the title of the presentation, I went up a couple of notches. So it's the evolution of a mentoring approach requires determination of its value. So you could probably guess that leans a little bit more into my academic world than my practical world. But if you stick around long enough, I think you will see a really convergence of ideas here that will be of great value to you. And I would certainly encourage you to pick out some paper and pencils and jot down some notes, doodle, noodle, whatever it is that you would like. But this will be put into an article as well that will be referenced in the comments section around this video part one, and as I mentioned, video part two. So here is my response using a longer path to get there, evident in this title. And in mentoring, you lay down 5D path stones if you're walking a path of mentoring. And they are dream, design, develop, deliver, and determine. So this presentation leans into the word determine here in blue, but you got to pick up that there are the other 4 path stones, and so they must have something to do with it as well. And as the presentation unfolds, you will start to see those connections. And one of the things that I always have to remember and share with who's ever asking the question is that which one you have is where you start. So of these 5Ds, whichever one you're looking at the moment, that's where you start. And then you lay the others down in meaningful patterns, recognizing and the value of each. So it's sort of like that chicken and egg story. And sometimes we forget and we go straight to, okay, what's evaluation? But hang on, there's some other elements that go with that. And that's what I'm going to be unpacking today. So let's start with the first component of this title, the evolution of a mentoring approach. And what I want to do is I want to add a few words here, and that will sort of round out this notion of mentoring approach. What I'm leaning into nowadays, and I'm sharing through the international mentoring community, is the addition of the words holistic and reciprocal. So it's the evolution of holistic, reciprocal mentoring approach. That's what we're after at this point in time. So that means we have to celebrate the fact that we've come from what's called traditional mentorship. Tends to be a one-way street. Well, that's what it feels like. Now, it may or may not to. That's why I put a question mark here. But it tends to be, okay, the mentor is interact with the mentee, and it tends to feel a little bit like a one-way street because the mentee is asking the mentor questions, getting answers, and then the mentees attempting to formulate, well, what would be my response? What would I do with those answers and put them into action? But if we come to the point of adding holistic or reciprocal, this is what happens. The holistic mentorship is integrating the whole system, whole person. In other words, everything is connected. And because everything is connected from a systems point of view and a person's point of view, so let's say whole system, the structure, the whole person, the relationships, they are all integrated. They are all interconnected. And if you pull on one, you are affecting the other. It's sort of like when you pick up one end of a stick, you pick up the other end of the stick. And if you have a coin, if you pick up one side of the coin, you pick up the other side of the coin, thus you have a coin. So this notion of holistic membership is that you're pulling and pushing and tugging and drawing forth and lifting the whole system and the whole person at the same time. The reciprocal membership is a reminder that it is a two-way street. So if it is working really well between the mentor and the mentee, it is possible that the mentee can become a mentor of the mentor. It's possible. And that's okay, is because that means that this reciprocalness is working in the dynamic of being holistic, and therefore both of you are benefiting from it. And the acknowledgement of this reciprocal nature of it just deepens and enriches the mentoring structure, arrangement with its connections and relationships. And therefore, you are integrating this notion of holistic and reciprocal mentoring. It's the approach that you're developing. So I'd ask you to take into consideration this notion of holistic and reciprocal when adding into mentoring. So it's how to evaluate a holistic reciprocal mentoring approach. That's what I would be going after. Now we're opening the second component of the title. And what I like to do is Rescript requires determination of its value. There's a lot actually here to unpack. And this is very much a nuanced presentation, okay? It's not a perfect presentation because none of this is perfect, but the presentation itself, what I'm attempting to share with you, is a way in which to assist your thinking and your feeling about this holistic reciprocal mentoring approach that you're creating. So what happens here, it requires determination of its value. So the key is determination. Remember the 5 Ds, determination. So we're adding the ideas of truth, worth, and usefulness based on experimentation, evaluation, and development research methodologies. So you can probably guess I'm getting involved with my academic world, but also these have been very helpful to me, and I'm hoping now with you, is that understanding these core concepts here will actually deepen and enrich your mentoring approach. So these broad research methodologies, and this is where I'm going to lean into the whiteboard. So I'm going to stop my share here. And what will happen is the whiteboard behind me will pop up. So you can see it here. So you'll notice is that at the top here, the idea of experimentation, evaluation, and development as research methodologies. So in this case, research is about search. It's about the search. So these methodologies are about searching for the ideas, the insights, using investigations, interpretations, inquiries to be able to bring this new knowledge and skill and attitude to you, in this case, to assist your mentoring approach, to serve as a mentor, to support your mentee. And the notion of experimentation is often has a quantitative flavor to it. It's about the crunching of numbers. And we can think of all the different ways in which we do experimentation, quasi-experiment research, using numbers. And so like when we take polls, all right, there are numbers that are involved with it. If we're looking at factor analysis, which factor is most important, we're crunching numbers with it. If we're looking at means of something, when you take a look at a bunch of numbers, what's the mean number? These are experimentation, quasi-experimentation. Think of a control group and a group that you interact with, and what happens based on a hypothesis, null hypothesis kind of system. That's the experimentation. You probably heard that one. The evaluation one is what you're attempting to do is do some summative continuous evaluation to sort of get at ways to improve something. So if experimentation is to prove something, evaluation is often about to improve something. And it tends to be a bit more what I would call a hybrid approach, whereas experimentation is quantitative, evaluation is quantitative and qualitative, which means then that this development research methodology involves a lot of qualitative tools and techniques. And we sometimes think of them nice fancy words like ethnography, which is the study of culture. We have phenomenology, which is the study of a phenomenon, and it's about how persons interpret it. So if you think of experimentation as crunching numbers, development is about bringing ideas of persons together. Evaluation is leaning into a hybrid of this experimentation and development, this quantitative, qualitative. So I'll leave it at that at this point in time. The determining of value then, this took me a little while to figure out, but someone always kept saying, okay, well, if there is this notion of knowing or understanding, which means comprehending, analyzing, synthesizing, getting up to this notion of valuing, what is it that we're valuing? And I thought, truth, worth, usefulness. That's what came to mind. Well, it didn't come just like that, but this is what came. And then I went, yeah, what I'm looking for is the truth of something. Can I prove the truth of it? Can I improve the worth of it? And can I utilize something for being useful? And then I went, well, hang on a minute. Truth to experimentation, worth to evaluation, usefulness to development. Oh, that's an interesting kind of combination. So the notion of the research methodology and value was coming together. And that's what really made it valuable to me, this value approach and this research that I was doing. I could mix and match and try and figure out what it is that I'm doing to get to a response to a question like, how do you evaluate, in this case, holistic and reciprocal mentoring, the mentoring approach? And then that brought forward, okay, that's great. data, information, knowledge. Okay, I understand that. But then I dove into it a little bit more and I said, okay, well, there's systems involved and there are persons involved. And therefore, measures with persons and metrics with systems. So the measures very much are anecdotal. They're coming from persons. They may be giving some number where they might rank something. All right, we don't think of that as like high-end quantitative, but there are number crunching. But then there's the metrics that come from the systems, like the actual numbers that you are using. So the number of times you met over the course of a month during a mentoring. What was the level of satisfaction, the measure of the mentee of being involved with the mentoring approach? And these measures and metrics popped up for me, and I went, "Oh, that's really helpful. That's really helpful." So what took place was this notion of if metrics can go with systems, then it would be about creating assets based on the evidence. And therefore, the measures being with persons was taking a look at their competence based on the education they were receiving. So I was able to balance these two elements up, knowing which of these research methodologies I was using. And sometimes when we only evaluate using metrics from this perspective of mentoring, we miss the notion of the measures coming at it from the mentor or mentee perspective. And if I'm looking at the full experience in the mentoring approach from the mentor mentee, this holistic perspective, then all of these are going to be present. Again, I've got to figure out which ones I'm working with, supported by my research, my search, right, for answers to questions that I'm having. And how might I bring all of this together? So this symbol looks like an arrow is just the sense of the path. So you're walking this, mixing and matching the metrics and the measures and the research methodologies to be able to pull up these ideas of systems, asset, evidence, persons, competence, and education. And this is the part where I just want to bring back that word nuance because this is not picture perfect. Yes, it's a picture. It's not perfect. It's meant to encourage the thinking and the feeling and bringing ideas together to see some meaningful patterns and recognize them. And let me know in the comments section what you're picking up so far about this and how this might play out as you look at this notion of the evaluation of mentoring approach, your mentoring approach, or if you're helping other mentors, the mentoring approach that you are supporting. So that got me to thinking, well, hang on a minute. I could express this mentoring approach as managing systems for persons using metrics, asset capacity. So managing the mentoring system for persons using metrics, establishing this asset capacity. Okay, which means leading persons from practices using measures, the competence capacity. I could say leading mentees, and if you're helping mentors, from the practices using the measures for competence capacity. So mentoring systems is asset capacity, measuring leading persons, leading the mentor and the mentee is about competence capacity. And these two statements then I have twirling around in my head when I'm attempting to evaluate to determine the value, all right, of mentoring, mentorship, mentor, mentee. Just put it out there. See what you think. And again, comments, please add at this point in time. Now, I appreciate the nuances and what I'm bringing up. And on one level, I've been known to, hang on a minute, it gets a little academic. Well, I'm being purposeful here because I'm attempting to bring in a very quick way some really important concepts that are in the background of the answer to how do you evaluate the mentoring approach. And with them, even if you just picked up different elements of this, then that would be excellent. That would be great. If we go all the way back to here, would it be possible that we're talking about determine is to evaluation, as deliver is to experimentation, as develop is to development? So whatever it is that you're dreaming, and then you start to design it, then you are using all of the different types of research methodologies. Therefore, you're using usefulness, truth, worth. I'm just laying it down, see if that helps you. Therefore, this dream and design, dreaming out the idea, converging into a design, and doing your noodling and doodling and bringing it all together so that when you go to develop it, it has the sense of them chasing each other. Even though we tend to look at them linearly, they are actually chasing each other. It's dynamic, it's holistic, it's reciprocal. Food for thought. So as I move towards closure of this part one of a response to how do you evaluate the mentoring approach, or in this case, the holistic reciprocal mentoring approach, I'm hoping that you would add that in now, is that in mentorship through evaluation, you're managing for asset capacity. That's what mentoring is doing. You're leading from competence capacity, which is for the mentor and the mentee. So if you bring the words managing and leading in, and asset capacity and competence capacity, and link them to mentoring and mentor and mentee, you have a way to really strengthen this notion of the determination, the evaluation of mentorship that you're putting into action, your mentoring approach. So to acknowledge, I will do a part two, which is the foreground practices. And a hint here, I'll be sharing it through action verbs with phrase outcomes. This is an approach that I use. I have found it to support all of what I'm talking about in a language that's an everyday language that you can put into place. So it really supports the practices that you're using as a mentor, that when you explain it to the mentee, they'll get it, they can move with you, they can flow with you and be on the journey together. Because one of the things you got to remember is that you as a mentor are on a unique journey. The mentee's on a unique journey. When you're together in the mentoring arrangement and connection, then you are adventuring together. I love that phrasing and that reminder. It has very much a deep head, heart, and hands kind of feeling to it. So we'll see you on part two. In the meantime, make sure that you subscribe, leave some comments, questions. If there's something that you need me to just explain a little bit more or describe, I'd be happy to. Or if you're looking for some resources, let me know. I can pull maybe out of my own library or send you to some places that I think would be of help to you based on your question. And make sure that you like and share. It'd be great if we can get this out and get more people in conversation. So with that, take care.